The Force is light and full of shadows.
Before we dive in, check the link in the description if you want exclusive Timelines members-only videos you won't find on YouTube, all on our Patreon. The pyre burns on the shores of Naboo. Qui-Gon Jinn's body rests at the center of it, wrapped in the white ceremonial cloth of the Jedi Order, already indistinguishable from the light consuming him. The flames reach high into the violet evening sky, and the smoke bends east toward the lake, carrying whatever remained of the man upward and away. Obi-Wan Kenobi stands at the front of the assembly, his jaw set, his eyes dry only because he has spent everything they had in the hour since the reactor shaft. Beside him, small and very still, Anakin Skywalker watches the fire. He doesn't cry. He is 9 years old and he has already learned that crying changes nothing. The heat reaches him across the distance. He lets it. There is nothing else here to hold on to. Not the Queen standing behind him in her white mourning paint. Not the Gungan elder with his beaded staff. Not the Jedi Council members arranged in a precise, measured row. He knows none of these people. He knew one man on this planet, and that man is smoke now. Mace Windu stands at the far end of the Jedi row, hands clasped behind his back. He does not watch the fire. He watches the boy. Morning light comes through the curved transparasteel panels in long, pale bands, falling across the 12 seats arranged in their ancient circle. Most are occupied. The ones that are not feel conspicuous. Obi-Wan Kenobi stands in the center of the chamber floor. He has slept perhaps 6 hours in 3 days. It shows in the set of his shoulders, in the faint rawness around his eyes that he is not quite disciplined enough yet to fully conceal. He is 25 years old. As of 4 days ago, he is a Jedi Knight. Qui-Gon's dying wish was explicit, he says. His voice is steady. He asked me to train the boy. I intend to honor that. Yoda's eyes move to Windu. A small, unhurried motion. The Council has reviewed your request, Windu says. We have also reviewed the boy. Then you know he's extraordinary. His midi-chlorian count alone, I know exactly what his count is. Obi-Wan. The use of the first name is not warmth. It is a precise instrument, closing the distance between them to ensure what follows is heard clearly. Extraordinary is not the concern. Obi-Wan's chin lifts a fraction. Then what is? Windu is quiet for a moment. The kind of quiet that is not hesitation. When he had stood in this chamber with the boy 2 days prior, the Shatterpoint sense had not flickered or whispered. It had struck him like an open palm across the face, hairline fractures of dark light spidering out from the child's Force presence in every direction. A web of potential fault lines so dense and so deep that Windu had controlled his expression only through 2 decades of practice. He had seen Shatterpoints in battlefields, in compromised structures, in men broken past the point of saving. He had never seen one in a child. He is the most dangerous thing I have brought into this temple in 40 years of service, Windu says. The darkness around him is not theoretical. It is structural. It runs through him the way a fault line runs through stone, not visible on the surface, not yet cracked, but present in every load-bearing layer. He pauses. Qui-Gon found the Chosen One. I do not dispute that. I am saying the Chosen One, untrained correctly, is not an asset. He is a catastrophe waiting for the right pressure. The chamber is very still. And you believe you can provide that training, Yoda says. I believe I am the only one in this room who can. No arrogance in it. The flatness of a stated fact. Vaapad is built on exactly this problem. How to take darkness that exists inside a practitioner and discipline it into something that serves the light rather than consuming it. The boy has more raw darkness coiled in him than anyone I have trained. He also has more raw potential. He looks at Obi-Wan. You are a fine knight, Obi-Wan. You will be a finer master one day. But you are 25 years old, and you are grieving your own master, and you are not equipped for what this boy requires. Not yet. Obi-Wan's jaw tightens. For a moment, grief and pride wore visibly across his face. Qui-Gon trusted him to me, he says quietly. Qui-Gon is dead. The words are not cruel. They are precise. His wishes deserved consideration. They have received it. This boy carries a dangerous darkness. He requires discipline you cannot yet provide, Obi-Wan. Windu holds his gaze for a beat. I will take him as my Padawan. Yoda lets the silence settle for exactly 3 seconds. Decided, this is, he says. Concur, the council does. Heavy is this burden, Mace. Carry it well. The rooms are spare. Not austere in the way of neglect, but in the way of deliberate reduction. A desk, a meditation mat, a single shelf of bound texts, a narrow window looking out over the endless amber glow of Coruscant at night. No decoration. No softness for its own sake. Every object present because it serves a function. Nothing present because it provides comfort. Anakin Skywalker sits on the edge of a sleeping pallet in the small adjoining room and stares at the floor. He is 9 years old. He is 50 million light years from his mother. The man who found him is Ash. The man who was supposed to train him is probably somewhere in this building being very politely angry. And the man who is going to train him instead is in the next room and has not smiled once in the 3 days Anakin has been in his proximity. He is very tired, and he does not cry, but it is a close thing. He doesn't hear Windu approach. One moment the doorway is empty. The next, it isn't. Windu stands at the threshold for a moment, reading the room the way he reads everything, precisely, without sentiment. Then he crosses it, and lowers himself to one knee on the stone floor, bringing his eyes level with Anakin's. The boy looks up. Windu's face at close range is not unkind. It is simply not arranged for comfort. It is the face of a man who has spent 40 years deciding what to keep and what to discard, and softness did not survive the audit. You're afraid, Windu says. Anakin's chin comes up immediately. I'm not, you are. No heat in it. Your shoulders are pulled in. Your force presence is contracted to about 1/4 of its natural radius. You've been sitting in the same position for 40 minutes without moving. He tilts his head a fraction. You are afraid, and you are pretending otherwise because you believe it makes you appear weak, and you already suspect I don't tolerate weakness. The boy has no answer for that. Windu studies him for another moment. Something shifts, not softening, precisely, but recalibrating. The Jedi will tell you to let go of fear, he says. They have been telling Padawans this for 1,000 years. It does not work. You cannot let go of a thing that is built into you at the structural level you can only pretend to, and the pretending costs you. He lets that land. I am not going to teach you to bury it. Anakin watches him, waiting. I am going to teach you how to make the darkness fear you. The room is very quiet. Outside the window, Coruscant hums its endless mechanical hum, a million ships and lives and transactions, indifferent to this particular room and this particular moment. Anakin doesn't feel better. Exactly. He doesn't feel the warm, uncomplicated safety he felt in Qui-Gon's presence during those few days on Naboo and Tatooine. This is nothing like that. But something in his chest that has been braced and ready for impact since the funeral, that tight, anticipatory flinch of a thing, eases, just slightly. Structure. It is the first structure anyone has handed him that doesn't ask him to pretend. Windu stands. He moves to the door. He pauses there without turning back. Sleep. Training begins at 5th hour. He leaves. The room darkens as Coruscant's artificial night cycle deepens outside. Anakin lies back on the pallet and stares at the ceiling, at the faint amber wash of city light that never fully leaves even the highest spires of the temple. His mother is somewhere behind him, one star system and one galaxy of distance away. Qui-Gon is smoke. Everything he knew is on the other side of a door that is closed. He says the words quietly, in the dark, to no one. I am going to teach you how to make the darkness fear you. He says them again. He does not sleep for a long time, but when he does not dream of losing anything. 5th hour comes before dawn. It comes before dawn for 1,460 days in a row. The Sauls at 5th hour belong to no one. The senior knights prefer the late morning. The younglings train in supervised afternoon cohorts. At 5th hour the long rooms are empty and cold, and lit by the pale blue glow of ceiling panels not yet warmed to full brightness. And that is precisely why Windu uses them. Anakin learns the 7 classical stances before he learns their names. Windu's method is physical first, conceptual second. The body must know the shape before the mind can debate it. He corrects posture with 2 fingers against a shoulder blade, a palm under an elbow. No words, no explanation. The adjustment simply happening until the position is held correctly, and held again until holding it incorrectly becomes the harder option. He learns to fall before he learns to fight. Windu drops him onto the mat 47 times in the first week. On the 48th, Anakin lands and rolls and comes up in a ready stance without thinking about it. Windu looks at him for exactly 1 second. He moves on to the next drill. Anakin learns that this is praise. The months stack. Academics alongside combat, galactic history, republic law, xenobiology, engineering theory. Anakin's mechanical aptitude does not disappear under Windu's training. It gets redirected. No more tinkering without purpose. Every machine Anakin touches must serve a documented function, must be understood at the component level, must be replicable from memory. His mind, which in another life might have scattered itself across 100 half-finished projects, learns instead to go deep. One thing. All the way down. He is 10. He is 11. He is angry. Frequently. In the way of a boy with too much energy and too much grief, and no adequate outlet for either. Windu notices. He says nothing. He waits. Windu's homeworld does not welcome visitors. The highland plateaus rise through a perpetual chemical mist, the kind that stings at the eyes and leaves a metallic taste at the back of the throat. The canopy below is thick and dangerous, and alive in ways that do not distinguish between prey and intruder. The heat is wet and absolute. They are here for 6 weeks. There are no saws. There are no ceiling panels. No mats. No controlled variables. There is the terrain, and there are 2 practice blades, and there is Windu, who sleeps 4 hours a night and shows no evidence of the other 20 requiring any recovery. The first week is survival fundamentals. How to move through hostile vegetation without announcing yourself. How to read a tree line. How to eat and navigate and maintain equipment in conditions actively hostile to all 3. Anakin is good at this, better than Windu expected. Though Windu's face registers expected and exceeded expectation with identical neutrality, so Anakin has no way of knowing. The second week is live blade drilling on uneven ground. The third week is live blade drilling on uneven ground, at night, against Windu. By the end of week 3, Anakin has a catalog of bruises that maps every mistake he has made, and he has stopped making most of them. It is in week 4 that he breaks. It is not a dramatic moment. It does not announce itself. They have been drilling for 3 hours in the afternoon heat, the same counter-sequence repeated until Anakin can run it correctly. And he cannot. Not today. Not this afternoon. Because the sequence requires a stillness at its center that he cannot reach. Because somewhere beneath the drilling and the sweat and the metallic air there is his mother in the dust of Mos Espa and Qui-Gon's voice in the ship corridor, and a boy who could see the future except for the parts that mattered. The practice blade hits the ground. Anakin is not aware of dropping it. He is aware of his own breathing, suddenly, too fast and too loud in the highland air. He is aware of his hands. He is aware of the thing behind his sternum that has been compressed for 2 years under the weight of structure and discipline suddenly pressing outward against every wall he has built. He screams. It is not a word. It is not aimed at anything. It comes up from somewhere below language, and it takes everything with it. The grief and the anger and the helplessness, and the years of 5th hour and the 47 falls, and the mother who does not know where he is, and the man who found him who is ash. He is on his knees in the highland grass when it runs out of him. His hands are shaking. Windu stands 4 meters away. He has not moved. He watches Anakin the way he watches everything. Fully. Without flinching. Without the discomfort that makes lesser people look away from someone else's breaking point. He crosses the distance. He picks up Anakin's practice blade from the grass. He holds it out. Good, Windu says. His voice is exactly as calm as it always is. Now, use it. Don't hide from what you feel. Aim it. Anakin looks up at him. His eyes are red. His hands are still shaking. He takes the blade. What Windu explains next, standing in the highland heat with the mist moving slow around them, takes 20 minutes to say and years to understand. Vaapad is not aggression. That is the first and most critical thing, and Windu repeats it in different configurations until the distinction is structural, not semantic. Aggression is undirected force expending itself outward, consuming fuel until the fuel is gone. Vaapad is a circuit. The practitioner opens, deliberately, with full awareness, to the darkness moving through a combat engagement. The opponent's ferocity. Their hatred. The dark side energy they project as weapon or threat. Instead of blocking it, instead of suppressing it, the Vaapad state receives it, metabolizes it, and discharges it back through the blade as controlled, amplified output. The door opens inward, Windu explains. The darkness comes through. And the discipline, the only thing that keeps the practitioner from being consumed by what they've let in, is the circuit itself. The loop, the intention to discharge rather than accumulate. You have been trying to keep the door closed, Windu says, for 2 years. Every fear, every memory, every anger, compressed behind a wall because you believed that was the Jedi way. He meets Anakin's eyes. It is one Jedi way. It is not your way. You are not built for suppression. You were built for conduction. He raises his own practice blade. Again, he says, this time, when the anger comes up, don't push it down. Open the circuit. Let it move through you and out the blade. Not at me. Through me. Anakin doesn't fully understand yet. He tries anyway. The first attempt is ragged. Too much, too fast, no discipline in the channel, and Windu redirects him 3 times in the first 30 seconds. The second attempt is worse, because he is thinking about it. The third attempt, Windu pushes hard, a real strike, not a drill tempo, unexpected, and Anakin reacts without thought, and for approximately 4 seconds the circuit opens on instinct, and the blade work that comes out of him is nothing like anything he has produced in 3 years of training. Windu stops. He looks at Anakin for a long moment. There, he says. That. The senior Padawan's name is Tae-Boon. He is 16, he has 4 years on Anakin, and he has been told this is a standard developmental sparring assessment. He has not been told anything about Vaapad, because Vaapad is not in the standard developmental curriculum. The match is supposed to last 3 minutes. It lasts 40 seconds. Tae-Boon is not unskilled. He opens with a textbook Form 3 sequence, economical and defensive, correctly reading Anakin as the smaller and less experienced combatant. He expects to control tempo. Anakin does not compete for tempo. He simply absorbs every ounce of pressure Tae-Boon applies and feeds it back harder and faster through angles that Form 3's defensive geometry is not designed to handle. Each counter arriving a half beat earlier than it should be possible given the exchange that preceded it. Tae-Boon accelerates, pressing, trying to find the ceiling of this, and the ceiling does not appear, and on the 6th exchange his guard collapses at precisely the point he cannot defend, and Anakin's blade stops 1 centimeter from his throat. 40 seconds. Tae-Boon stands very still. He is breathing hard. Anakin is not. From the doorway, Mace Windu watches. He says nothing. He nods once, a single, fractional downward motion, barely enough to qualify as movement. Anakin, across the salle, sees it. He keeps his expression still. He has learned that from Windu too, but somewhere behind his sternum, in the exact place where the grief used to sit compressed and silent, something shifts. Not pride, steadier than pride. The darkness has learned which direction to flow. Windu sees it in the sparring matches first, not the anger. The anger has a direction now, a channel, a disciplined outlet that Vaapad has given it. What he sees is subtler and more dangerous than anger. It lives in the half-second before Anakin engages, in the fractional hesitation at the beginning of a sequence that should be seamless by now. It surfaces in meditation, in the slight contraction of Anakin's force presence at the edges, as though some part of him is perpetually braced against a blow that hasn't landed yet. Windu has seen this pattern before. In soldiers, in operatives extracted from long campaigns who carry the theater of war home in their bodies without knowing it. He sits in his quarters one evening, the city burning amber outside the window, and he maps the shatterpoint with the same cold precision he would apply to a compromised bridge strut or a cracked hull plate. The fault line runs in one direction. Southwest, 40 parsecs past the outer rim. Tatooine. He does not debate the decision for long. An unresolved shatterpoint in your own apprentice is not a philosophical problem. It is a tactical liability that compounds interest with every passing month, and Windu did not build his reputation on leaving structural weaknesses unaddressed, because addressing them was inconvenient. He goes before the council in the morning. A humanitarian reconnaissance mission, Windu says into Hutt space. There have been documented irregularities in the Mos Espa slave markets, unusual transaction volumes, possible Republic-connected contraband moving through the system. It warrants investigation. Ki-Adi-Mundi's brow lifts a fraction. And you require your Padawan for this investigation. I require my Padawan for all missions. He is my Padawan. Yoda's eyes move between them, slow and very old. Transparent, your reasoning is not entirely. Mace, my reasoning is that an unresolved psychological fault line in a Padawan with Anakin's potential and Anakin's power level is a liability to this council, and to the Order, Windu says. I intend to close it. The cover framing of the mission is legitimate. There are actual irregularities worth investigating. Both things are true simultaneously. The silence in the chamber has the quality of a held breath. Authorized, Yoda says finally. Careful. B. Hutt space tolerates Jedi presence poorly. Windu nods once. We won't be there long. The twin suns hit without apology. The light here is not the diffused amber of Coruscant's cityscape. It is direct and total, and it bleaches everything it touches. The sand, the mud brick walls, the canvas awnings of the market stalls, to a uniform, exhausted pallor. The heat comes up from the ground as much as down from the sky. The air smells of engine oil, livestock, and the particular dry nothing of a planet that the galaxy mostly uses as a place to forget things. Anakin walks half a step behind Windu and says nothing. His jaw is set in the way Windu has catalogued across 3 years of observation, the specific configuration that means he is controlling something tightly and would prefer not to be asked about it. Windu does not ask about it. He navigates the market with the efficiency of a man who has been in worse places under worse conditions, his sand-colored travel cloak rendering him unremarkable, his hand nowhere near his lightsaber, because the lightsaber is not the instrument this situation requires. Watto's shop occupies a cramped corner of the Mos Espa market, its shelves crowded with salvage parts in varying states of functionality. The Toydarian himself is behind the counter, wings beating in his characteristic hovering fidget, blue-gray skin catching the light from the single overhead lamp. He sees Anakin first. His compound eyes flicker with something between recognition and wariness. Then, he sees Windu. Windu stops in front of the counter and says nothing for a moment, which is itself a form of communication. He lets the silence work. He lets Watto feel the particular quality of attention being paid to him by a man who has no reason to hurry. I am here to discuss the status of Shmi Skywalker, Windu says. His voice is the same voice he uses in the council chamber. Measured, absolute, the voice of someone who has already determined the outcome of this conversation and is now simply administering it. Watto's wings beat faster. She's not. The boy has nothing to do with. I know who the boy is. I know who you are. I know the precise terms under which she was acquired and the current market valuation for a human female with her skill set in Hutt space. Windu places both hands flat on the counter, very calmly. I also know that the Mos Espa markets are currently under informal Republic oversight review, and that the particular transaction records surrounding her acquisition contain irregularities that would be of significant interest to a Senate committee. He holds Watto's gaze. We can discuss those irregularities if you prefer. Or, we can discuss a purchase price. One of those conversations ends with you conducting business as usual tomorrow morning. The shop is very quiet except for the sound of Watto's wings. How much? Watto says. The paperwork takes 2 hours. It should take 4, but Windu does not give it the opportunity. Shmi Skywalker walks out of Watto's shop at the third hour of the afternoon, carrying everything she owns in a single cloth bag, squinting against the sunlight. She stops on the threshold and looks at the two figures waiting in the street, the tall man in the sand cloak standing very straight, and the boy beside him, who is not a boy anymore, not quite, who is 13 and taller than she last saw, and standing with a stillness she doesn't recognize. Anakin crosses the distance before she finishes the thought. He does not run. He has learned not to run toward things in the 3 years since Windu took him, has learned to move with intention, with control. But the control is a container that was not built for this particular moment, and what fits inside it and what doesn't are apparent to anyone watching. He holds her, like she might disappear. She holds him like she already did once. Windu stands 6 meters away with his hands clasped behind his back and looks at a point in the middle distance, giving them the privacy of his deliberate inattention. His face is composed, arranged in the neutral precision that constitutes his resting expression. There is a moment. It lasts perhaps 3 seconds, where something crosses it that is not neutrality. It is not warm, exactly, it is not soft. It is the expression of a man who has made a correct tactical decision and finds in the execution of it something he did not budget for. He looks away before Anakin can see it. They arrange transport from Mos Espa to a Republic shuttle, and from there passage to Alderaan, not the capital, but a quiet provincial settlement with a modest allocation from a Jedi humanitarian fund that Windu has never previously called upon. A house. Resources sufficient for stability and dignity. A life that is simply a life, unowned by anyone. Shmi asks no questions about the mechanism of this. She asks one question, quietly, as they walk through the Mos Espa port. She asks if her son is well. Windu considers the question with his characteristic precision. He is becoming exceptional, he says. Then, after a beat that might be the closest he comes to deliberate gentleness, he is well. She looks at him for a moment. Then she nods, and doesn't ask anything further. The Alderaan shuttle departs at dusk. Anakin watches it until the running lights disappear into the darkening atmosphere, then watches the sky where it was for another few seconds. Then he turns. Windu is already facing him, ready to move toward the return shuttle. He reads Anakin's expression with the efficiency he applies to everything, the processed relief, the residual grief that is now grief without ongoing fear feeding it, the particular quality of someone who has just had a weight lifted that they had been carrying so long they no longer noticed the weight. Nobody's ever done that, Anakin says. His voice is steady. It costs him something to keep it that way, not for me. Windu holds his gaze for a moment. An unresolved wound doesn't heal itself, he says. Now it's closed. He turns toward the shuttle. Train harder, he walks. Anakin follows. The return to Coruscant takes 3 days. Anakin spends most of the transit in the ship's small training area, running drills. And Windu observes from the doorway at intervals and says nothing because there is nothing to correct. The shatter point is still present. It does not vanish. A fault line this structural does not simply disappear because its primary stressor has been removed. But its character has changed. The hairline fractures around Anakin's force presence that once spidered outward in every direction under the pressure of unaddressed fear now run along a single, stable axis. Grief without terror. Loss without helplessness. A wound that has been closed properly rather than plastered over. Windu catalogues the difference with clinical precision and files it, and says nothing about it to anyone. What he does not file, what he does not catalogue, is the 3 seconds on a dusty Tatooine street that he has already decided are operationally irrelevant. Some things a man keeps. Palpatine is patient in the way that deep water is patient. He does not hurry. He does not need to. He has been the most powerful man in the Republic for longer than most of his colleagues have been alive. And he achieved that position by understanding one foundational truth about power. It does not announce itself. It waits. It studies the terrain. It identifies the precise point where a small, correctly placed pressure will produce a result that 10 years of frontal assault could not. He has been studying Anakin Skywalker for 2 years. What he sees is extraordinary. What he sees is also, from a certain angle, a problem. The boy was supposed to arrive unformed, frightened, brilliant, attached, unaddressed, the perfect clay. Instead, he arrives in every public context flanked by 3 years of Mace Windu's imprint, and the imprint is visible in everything from his posture to his syntax. Clipped, precise, armored in a way that canon Jedi training doesn't produce at 13, because canon Jedi training tells boys to let go of their fear, and Windu has apparently done something different and more dangerous. Palpatine adjusts. He always adjusts. The invitation is extended through proper channels, a note to Master Windu, formal and respectful, expressing the Chancellor's admiration for the Padawan's reported progress and his wish to offer the boy an informal audience. An honor, a recognition, nothing more. Windu reads the note twice. Then he sets it on his desk and looks at it for a moment with the expression he reserves for things that confirm what he already suspected. He tells Anakin that evening. Anakin is 15. He sits across the desk from Windu with his hands resting still in his lap, a learned stillness, not a natural one, and Windu knows the difference, and listens without interrupting. He has requested a private audience, Windu says. I am going to permit you to attend. Anakin's expression doesn't change. You're sending me in alone. I am trusting you to go in alone. Those are different things. A beat. What does he want? To assess you. To begin constructing a relationship with you outside my observation. Windu folds his hands on the desk. He has done this before, cultivated young Jedi with particular promise, positioned himself as a supplementary mentor figure, someone who understands them in ways the Order does not. He is very skilled at it. He pauses. You will let him try. Anakin looks at him steadily. And while he tries, you will use what I have taught you. Windu meets his eyes, not the blade work. The other thing, what do you see when a person's force presence is not what their words claim it to be? Anakin answers without hesitation. Fracture lines, where the mask meets the face underneath. Yes, Windu stands. Go, listen more than you speak. Report back plainly. Do not perform suspicion. A man like Palpatine reads performance immediately. Simply be what you are, and watch what he does with it. He says nothing further. The briefing is complete. The office is designed to impress without appearing to try. The curved walls rise to a domed ceiling inlaid with a Republic seal in gold and ivory. The desk is old, genuine wood from a core world forest, positioned to place the Chancellor in the light from the tall windows behind him, while keeping visitors fractionally in shadow. The chairs arranged before it are comfortable, but lower than the desk chair by exactly enough to be noticeable to the body, without registering consciously in the mind. Anakin notices all of this in the first 15 seconds. Palpatine rises when he enters. He is warm in the way of a fire correctly sized for its hearth, exactly enough, neither overwhelming nor insufficient. His smile reaches his eyes with practiced precision. He comes around the desk to greet Anakin directly rather than receiving him from behind it, which closes the power differential the furniture creates and registers, to the unguarded mind, as genuine regard. My boy, he says, and the words carry an affection that sounds so unforced that Anakin understands immediately why it works on people who haven't been taught to listen beneath words. He shakes the Chancellor's hand. He keeps his expression open, curious, appropriately deferential. Windu said not to perform suspicion. He performs nothing. He opens the circuit instead. Not the combat version, a quieter aperture. The meditative shatterpoint attention Windu has been drilling him in since the beginning. The capacity to look at a person's force presence and see where the surface and the structure don't match. The Chancellor gestures to a chair. Anakin sits. They talk for 40 minutes. Palpatine is extraordinary at this. Anakin grants him that without reservation. He asks questions that seem like genuine curiosity and are actually precision instruments. What does Anakin find most challenging about his training? Does he feel the Council fully understands his unique potential? Does Windu's severity sometimes feel like a ceiling rather than a structure? Each question is a feint toward a specific weak point, testing the terrain, checking what yields and what holds. Anakin answers each one honestly and briefly, and without giving ground he doesn't know he's giving, which is not the same as giving no ground at all, but is close enough that Palpatine's questions begin arriving at slightly longer intervals as he recalibrates. Meanwhile, Anakin watches. The Shatterpoint sense is not dramatic. Windu taught him this early. It does not announce itself in flashes or visions. It is simply perception. The same attention he gives to a combat opponent's weight distribution and blade angle applied to a different register. He watches Palpatine's force presence the way he watches a stance. What he sees settles into clarity over the course of 20 minutes. The warmth is a posture. Not false exactly. The Chancellor experiences something in this room, some genuine version of interest, but the warmth is deployed, positioned, adjusted in real time based on what Anakin's responses reveal. Behind it, running along the fault lines where the performance meets whatever is underneath, Anakin sees something else. Hunger, old and very controlled and very large, the way a deep water current is large, invisible at the surface, moving everything. And threaded through it, so faint that Anakin nearly catalogs it as his own imagination, a darkness that has no analog in anything he has encountered in the Jedi Temple. He does not let this register on his face. Palpatine leans forward slightly. You know, I have always believed that the Jedi Order, for all its wisdom, sometimes fails to fully appreciate what makes certain individuals exceptional. His voice carries the intimate register of a confidence shared between equals. Your power is genuinely extraordinary, Anakin. I wonder sometimes whether the traditional training structure, designed for a different kind of Jedi, limits rather than develops what you specifically could become. Anakin looks at him. Master Windu has never made me feel limited, he says. His voice is polite. Even, a very brief recalibration behind Palpatine's eyes. Of course, I meant no criticism of Master Windu. He is among the finest in the Order. I simply mean, a small self-deprecating gesture, that a man of your potential deserves every possible avenue of development. And if you ever feel that the Order's structure is not serving that potential, I hope you know my door is always open to you. As a friend. Anakin smiles. It is a perfectly calibrated smile, warm enough to be genuine, contained enough to give nothing. That's very kind, Chancellor, he says. I'll remember that. Anakin delivers the report standing. As he delivers all reports, hands at his sides, eyes level, voice stripped of editorializing. He spent the first 20 minutes testing for resentment toward you and toward the Council. When he didn't find enough to work with, he shifted to flattery about my potential and an offer of supplementary mentorship framed as friendship. He pauses. He speaks of peace, Master, but he reeks of ambition. Windu is very still. Describe the fracture lines, he says. Deep, very controlled. Whatever is underneath the performance has been underneath it for a long time. It's structural, not situational. Anakin's brow draws together slightly, the first editorial he's allowed himself. And there's a darkness in his force presence that I don't have a reference for. Nothing I've encountered in the temple reads like that. The room is quiet. Windu turns to the window. Outside, Coruscant burns its perpetual amber, a trillion lives conducting their business in total ignorance of a conversation happening in a small room at the top of a spire. He says nothing for a long moment. In the silence, something that has lived in Windu as unprovable instinct for years, a suspicion too large and too dangerous to speak before it had evidence, shifts 1 degree toward certainty. Go and sleep, he says finally. You performed well. Anakin moves to the door. He stops there without quite turning back, the way Windu himself sometimes does. He's dangerous, Anakin says. Not a question. Yes, Windu says. He is still looking at the window. He is. In the Republic Executive Building, the Chancellor sits alone in his office long after the last aide has departed for the evening. The warmth is gone from his face entirely. What remains is older and quieter and very focused. The boy is Windu's. Thoroughly, structurally, in ways that simple flattery will not dislodge. He turns to his desk. He opens a secured channel. He begins to accelerate the timeline. The Separatist crisis arrives the way crises always do, not as a single event but as a pressure that has been building for years, finally finding the joint it can break through. Count Dooku's name has been in Republic intelligence reports for 18 months before Geonosis. A fallen Jedi. A political idealist turned revolutionary architect, assembling a coalition of disaffected systems and corporate interests under the banner of separation from a republic he publicly argues has grown too corrupt to reform. The reports are dry and precise, and they omit the thing that matters most, which is that Dooku is not an idealist. He is a Makashi dualist of the highest order, and he has a master no one in the Senate knows exists, and the war he is engineering has a purpose the Senate would not survive understanding. Windu knows more than the reports say. He has known for 2 years. He has been building a file, quietly, in the way he does everything. One confirmed fact at a time. No speculation admitted until it earns its place. When the transmission from Obi-Wan Kenobi arrives from Geonosis, droid foundries, clone army, separatist leadership assembled, execution ordered, Windu reads it once and stands up. He goes to find Anakin. The arena is ancient, and it smells of iron and the particular dry heat of a planet whose atmosphere sits at the edge of breathable. 20,000 Geonosians fill the tiered stands in a chittering, clicking mass, their wings catching the light when they shift. The execution posts stand at the arena's center, 3 of them, stone-worn smooth by previous use that Anakin does not let himself think about in detail. Obi-Wan. Padme Amidala. A Jedi Knight Anakin does not recognize, one of the strike team. Taken alive when the others fell, wrists bound to the post with the particular stillness of someone who has made their peace with the next few minutes. 3 prisoners. An arena full of Geonosians. 200 battle droids arrayed in formation at the perimeter. 3 execution creatures, a Nexu, an Akle, a Reek, held in their gates at the cardinal points. Windu and Anakin enter from the eastern gate at the signal. Not a rescue party, not a cavalry charge. 2 people, walking, with a combined economy of motion that the crowd takes several seconds to process before the chittering begins to shift register. Windu ignites his lightsaber. The purple blade catches the arena light. Anakin ignites his. They do not discuss tactics. They have drilled for this, not this specifically, but the underlying structure of this. 2 combatants, asymmetric numbers, open terrain, multiple simultaneous threat vectors. The conversation happens in the Force, in the half-second adjustments of 2 people who have trained together for years and no longer need language to move as a single system. Windu takes the droids at the eastern perimeter. He moves through them with a precise violence that is almost economical, not the wild power of a fighter who overwhelms with force, but the targeted efficiency of one who sees exactly where each droid's threat potential concentrates and addresses only that point, nothing extra. Photoreceptors. Weapon joints. The gap between torso casing and hip assembly. Anakin goes for the creatures. The Akle comes first, 6-legged, crustacean. 3 meters of armored aggression, moving faster than its mass should allow. It targets him at a full run, claws tearing furrows in the arena floor. He doesn't move back. He opens the Vaapad circuit and lets the creature's momentum become part of the equation. It arrives. He steps inside its reach at the last possible interval where its claws cannot track, and takes one leg at the joint and uses its own forward velocity to carry it past him and into the arena floor, where it does not get up. The Reek comes from the left. He is already moving. The Nexu goes for the prisoners. Anakin reaches without looking, a full telekinetic extension across the arena floor, seizing the Nexu's hindquarters mid-leap and arresting its trajectory with a force that costs him something real, enough that his vision whites at the edges for a half-second. He holds it suspended. He redirects it into the arena wall at speed sufficient to end the engagement. He does not stop moving through any of this. Obi-Wan finds him in the middle of the arena floor with 2 deactivated droids at his feet, breathing harder than he was 10 minutes ago, watching the remaining battle droid formation begin to collapse as clone forces breach the arena perimeter on multiple vectors simultaneously. "You're here," Obi-Wan says. He sounds like a man who has been expecting death and received something else. "Master Windu's plan," Anakin says. "Which was? Come first. Come fast." Anakin looks toward the arena's eastern exit, where Windu is moving with purpose. Dooku. The hangar is at the arena complex's northern edge, a vast functional space smelling of fuel and hot metal, shadows gathering in the upper reaches where the lighting doesn't reach. Dooku stands at its center as though he arranged himself there. His posture is the posture of a man who has been expecting this and finds the waiting tedious rather than frightening. The supreme confidence of someone who has not lost a duel in decades. He is nearly 80 years old. He carries himself like a blade. His eyes move between Windu and Anakin with the calibrated assessment of a duelist reading opponents, and what Anakin sees in them is dismissal, not of Windu, whom Dooku clearly recognizes as a genuine threat, but of Anakin, whom he categorizes in the first 3 seconds as a secondary consideration, an apprentice brought for experience, not for outcome. This is Dooku's shatterpoint. He doesn't know it yet. Mace, Dooku says. His voice is a cultivated baritone, the product of Jedi training and aristocratic upbringing and decades of public address. I had hoped this day would not come. I had hoped reason might prevail. It has, Windu says. Surrender, Dooku's saber ignites. Curved hilt, crimson blade. The red is wrong in a way that goes beyond color. A wrongness in the force that the blade radiates like heat. He settles into Form 2's opening guard with the ease of a man taking a familiar chair. I think not. Makashi is a form built for one thing, the perfect duel between two disciplined opponents. Its geometry is economical to the point of minimalism, every motion serving double purpose, no energy wasted on dramatic flourish. The blade moving only as far as it must and returning immediately to guard. Dooku's Makashi is the form at its ceiling. He has been refining it for decades, and against most opponents in this era, that refinement is sufficient. He presses Windu immediately, correctly identifying him as the primary threat. The exchange is controlled and very fast. Dooku's precision against Windu's Vaapad. Each man fully engaged, neither gaining ground in the first 30 seconds. Anakin circles. He watches. He opens the Shatterpoint sense and applies it to the duel's geometry, to Dooku's footwork, to the micro-patterns in his blade movement. Makashi's fundamental architecture begins to resolve. The form's weaknesses are structural. It is designed for single-opponent engagements. Its defensive geometry optimized for attacks originating from one direction. Against two combatants operating from different vectors, it must choose which opponent to prioritize, and the choice creates a seam. Dooku rotates to address both of them simultaneously. He is skilled enough to manage this. But managing it costs him something in his offensive output against Windu. And Windu feels the shift and presses harder, and Dooku allocates more defense to the Vaapad, and the seam on the secondary vector opens by another 3 degrees. Anakin moves. Not a dramatic lunge. A precise, angled approach along Dooku's most defended side, counterintuitive enough that it takes Dooku a half-second to register the geometry has changed, and the half-second is the interval. And Anakin's blade finds the space between Dooku's guard and his instinctive retreat, with a precision that has Windu's fingerprints all over it. The disarming strike is exact. Dooku's saber leaves his hand. He is disarmed before he fully understands that he has lost. The crimson blade clatters across the hangar floor and goes dark. Dooku stands very still. He is breathing carefully. His eyes move to Anakin with a different quality of attention than they held 3 minutes ago. Not respect, not quite, but the recalibration of a man who has made a significant error in assessment and is processing the cost of it. Yield, Anakin says. A long moment. The hangar is very quiet. Remarkable, Dooku says softly, to no one in particular. He yields. Clone Commander Cody finds them 6 minutes later with a secured transport and a containment restraint for a former Jedi Master, and the look on his face when he sees Dooku in binders is the closest thing to stunned that Kaminoan behavioral conditioning allows. Windu hands Dooku to the commander, without ceremony. He turns to Anakin. He says nothing for a moment. What Anakin has just done, what the two of them together have just done, will reach the Senate by morning and the Holonet by midday. A battle won. A war's architect taken alive. The Separatist command structure, which runs through Dooku like a spine, suddenly without its spine. Windu looks at Anakin for 3 seconds. In those 3 seconds, something that is not quite pride and not quite anything else with a clean name moves across his face. Correct geometry, he says. He walks toward the transport. Anakin follows. Behind them, Count Dooku walks in binders in the custody of the Grand Army of the Republic, and the Clone Wars, which were supposed to last years, begin with their architect already in a cell. War does not look the way the holonet makes it look. The holonet shows clean engagements. Decisive victories. Commanders standing on captured ground with their cloaks intact, making statements about the Republic's resolve. What the holonet does not show is the smell of a battlefield 12 hours after the droids have been deactivated, scorched metal and something underneath it that is not metal. It does not show the clone troopers who go quiet in the mess hall after a particular engagement and stay quiet. It does not show a young general sitting alone in a command tent at the 3rd hour of the morning, working out how to take a fortified position with 30% fewer men than the engagement parameters call for. Because 30% of his men are in the medical bay, and the engagement parameters were written by someone who has never been on Geonosis. Anakin Skywalker commands the 501st Legion for 22 months before the Senate notices what his casualty figures actually say. They are the lowest in the Grand Army. The 501st's troopers call him General Skywalker in formal contexts, and nothing at all in informal ones, because the informal contexts require a name that fits, and nothing quite fits. He is 20 years old, and he plans engagements the way Windu taught him to read a duel, identify the shatter point, apply precise force. Do not expend what you do not need to expend. Captain Rex figures him out in the first month. Rex is a FET template, with 17 months of combat experience, and the pragmatic intelligence of a man who has survived things the template designers did not specifically train for. He observes his new general across 3 engagements before forming a conclusion, and his conclusion is this: Skywalker does not win battles by being reckless. He wins them by being correct. Most Jedi generals lead from inspiration, Rex tells Sergeant Appo after the Teth campaign. The campaign in which Anakin spent 4 days finding the precise point in a separatist defensive network, where one correctly placed insertion team would collapse the entire structure without a frontal assault. Skywalker leads from geometry. Appo considers this. What's the difference? Inspiration gets people killed in interesting ways, Rex says. Geometry just gets the objective. The Christophsis campaign is the clearest demonstration. Separatist Admiral Trench has blockaded the planet with a formation specifically designed to defeat a conventional Republic assault, layered deflector coverage, interlocking fire arcs. The kind of defensive geometry that a frontal engagement would need 3 times the Republic's available fleet tonnage to crack. Trench has done this before. His record against conventional tactics is unbroken across 11 engagements. He does not lose to things he can see coming. Anakin spends 14 hours with the fleet's sensor data and Rex and a tactical display. And what he concludes is that the problem is not the formation. The problem is Trench himself. The Admiral's targeting systems are his primary weapon. Precise, fast, almost autonomous in their lock-on capability. They have never failed him. Which means he has built his entire tactical identity around them. Which means they are also his fault line. There is an experimental prototype in the Republic's auxiliary fleet. A stealth ship. Cloaked, running silent. Designed for insertion operations and not for direct engagement, which is precisely why it has never occurred to Trench to build a counter for it. Rex objects to the plan on tactical grounds. Anakin explains, with the patience of someone who has been trained by Mace Windu, that the tactical grounds are precisely why he is taking it himself, rather than sending someone else into a situation with no margin for recalibration. Rex goes quiet. He has learned that when Skywalker explains a decision, the explanation is the end of the debate. The stealth ship clears the blockade running dark. No emissions, no targeting signature, nothing for Trench's systems to find. Anakin takes it in close, closer than the design parameters recommend. Close enough that the Admiral's lock-on systems finally register something and begin to track. He lets them lock. Then he transmits the homing signal directly back along the targeting beam, reverses the instrument Trench has spent his career perfecting, and watches it find Trench's own flagship from the inside. The explosion is precise. The formation, deprived of its command ship, collapses in the way that carefully constructed things collapse when their shatter point is correctly identified, immediately and totally. Christophsis falls in 4 days. Padme Amidala opens the door and Anakin is standing in the hallway in civilian clothes, which she was not expecting. Holding nothing because he is the kind of person who does not bring things to demonstrate intent. She has not seen him since Geonosis, the chaos of the arena, the impossible efficiency of the rescue, a brief exchange in the aftermath before the clone deployment consumed everything. She remembers thinking, in that exchange, that he was nothing like the boy Qui-Gon had found on Tatooine. She had met that boy once, briefly, for approximately 20 minutes, and he had been sweet and slightly overwhelming in the way of children who feel everything at high volume. The man in her hallway is still, very still, in the way of someone for whom stillness is a trained state rather than a natural one. And she can see the training in it. And underneath the training she can see something that is not trained at all. "Senator Amidala," he says. "You've met me," she says. "You can use my name." He considers this for a moment with a seriousness that would be amusing if it weren't so genuine. "Padme," she steps back from the door. "Come in." They talk for 3 hours. This is not what either of them anticipated. Padme anticipated. She is honest with herself about her own anticipations. Something more effortful. A young man managing the gap between what he feels and what he knows how to say. She has navigated that particular dynamic before, in various political and personal registers, and she knows its rhythm. Anakin does not have that dynamic. He says what is accurate, and stops when he has said it, which creates a conversational space that is more comfortable than she expected, and slightly unnerving for reasons she takes a few minutes to identify. He is not performing confidence. He is not performing anything. He is simply present in the room with her, and what he says is what he means. And the gap between those two things that she has learned to listen for in every conversation she has is simply not there. He asks about her work in the Senate. The question is genuine. She can tell the difference, and when she answers he follows the thread with the focused attention of someone who finds the actual subject interesting, rather than someone who finds her interesting and is using the subject as a vehicle. She asks about the war. He is honest about this too, in a way that is unusual. He does not give her the HoloNet version. He tells her about Teth, about the geometry of the problem and the solution, about Rex, about the stealth ship at Christophsis. He tells her that the casualty figures she has probably seen in Senate briefings represent the human cost of decisions made correctly, and that correct decisions still have human costs, and that he thinks about this at the 3rd hour of the morning more than he thinks about anything else. She looks at him for a moment. "You're not what I expected," she says. "I know," he says. "People say that. What do they expect?" He considers the question with genuine attention. Something less careful, he says. It develops across 7 months the way things develop when two people are honest with each other and not frightened of what the honesty reveals. Slowly, because Anakin's deployments allow for slow, and because Padme is not a person who moves toward things without understanding them first. They are candid about the code, not as an obstacle requiring navigation, but as a real constraint that deserves a real conversation. Padme asks what Jedi attachment actually means in practical terms, and Anakin explains it precisely, and they discuss it the way they discuss everything, which is directly. And what emerges from the discussion is not a plan to evade the restriction, but an acknowledgement that what exists between them already, and what it might become, are things that should be named before they are acted on. He does not tell Windu directly. Windu is not told. But Windu notices. He notices the way he notices everything. The slight alteration in Anakin's force presence after Coruscant deployments, the quality of his focus in the days before scheduled returns. He says nothing. What he does, in a briefing 3 weeks after Anakin's 3rd visit to Senator Amidala's apartment, is assign Anakin to a longer-range deployment and then, 2 days later, quietly cancel it and reassign him to the Coruscant theater. Anakin does not mention this. Windu does not mention it. Between them, in the space where the conversation is not happening, something is understood. The war grinds through its 2nd year. The separatist leadership, deprived of Dooku since Geonosis, has not collapsed. Dooku's capture disrupted cohesion, but the corporate interests and the droid foundries have their own momentum. But the strategic picture has shifted. The Republic has the initiative. It is Rex who first notices the anomaly. A set of behavioral reports from the front. filed by 3 separate medical officers across 3 separate legions, noting that certain clone troopers in high-stress engagements are exhibiting unusual neurological events, brief, total behavioral interruptions, lasting 3 to 7 seconds, followed by complete return to baseline with no memory of the interval. Rex flags it to Anakin in a routine briefing, at the bottom of a longer report, the way you flag things that don't yet have a category. Anakin reads it twice. He doesn't say anything to Rex. That night he sends a coded transmission to Coruscant, to a private channel Windu checks once a day, every day, without exception. Behavioral anomalies in the clone population. 3 independent medical reports. Neurological. No current explanation. We should look at this. Tipoca City exists in defiance of the ocean that surrounds it. The platforms rise on enormous stilts from a sea that has no coastline, no shore, no horizon that isn't water. The storms come without warning and leave without apology, and the city simply endures them, white and sealed and self-contained, a closed system built by people who understood that the thing they were manufacturing required isolation from the rest of the galaxy's questions. Anakin has never liked it here. He registered the feeling on his first visit, 2 years into the war, filed it as operationally irrelevant, and has been unable to fully discard it since. There is something in Tipoca City's architecture that resolves, under sustained attention, into the architecture of a facility rather than a home. Everything designed for function, for containment, for the efficient production of a very specific output. He understands now, standing in a corridor outside the primary growth chamber with a deactivated biochip and a sealed specimen container in his left hand, why that feeling never resolved into irrelevance. Windu stands beside him. His face is composed. The composure is doing significant work. 6 weeks earlier. Coruscant. The Jedi Temple. The behavioral anomaly reports had multiplied by the time Windu pulled Anakin from the Outer Rim deployment. 11 medical officers across 7 legions. The neurological interruption pattern was consistent enough across reports to rule out individual medical variants. This was systemic, not incidental, embedded in the clone population at a level that predated the war. Windu had gone to the archives first. Not the public archive. The operational intelligence files that his council rank gave him access to, and that he had been quietly building for 3 years. The file on Palpatine. The file on Dooku. The file on the separatist movement's corporate backing. He had cross-referenced the behavioral reports against the Kaminoan contract documents. The ones negotiated by the late Sifo Dyas. The ones that still had authorship gaps that no one in the Senate had been formally asked to explain. He had found the gaps lined up in a direction he recognized. He had sent for Anakin. The contract for the clone army was commissioned in secret, Windu said. He laid the documents across the table in the specific order he had determined made the logic clearest. Sifo Dyas acted without council authorization. He is dead. The Kaminoans deal in precision. They do not produce sloppy work. Which means every element of the clone template was deliberate, reviewed, signed off. He placed one finger on the biochip notation buried in page 47 of the original Kaminoan production specifications, including this. Anakin read the notation. He read it again. They call it a behavioral regulator, he said. They do. Regulating what behavior? That, Windu said, is what we are going to Kamino to determine. Lama Su had received them with the smooth, elongated courtesy of a Kaminoan who has had years to practice receiving questions he does not intend to fully answer. His neck curved in its characteristic arc as he guided them through the facility's primary corridors, his white robes moving without sound, his explanation of the biochip arriving in measured. Precise language that said a great deal about growth acceleration protocols and very little about behavioral override functions. Windu had let him talk. He was very good at letting people talk until the shape of what they were not saying became clearer than what they were. It was Anakin who had asked for a medical bay. The clone trooper's name is CT-7567. Rex, he had been in the Coruscant garrison for a quarterly review when Anakin pulled him for what he described as a routine medical evaluation, which was accurate in the way that a sentence can be accurate and still omit its most important content. Rex sat in the medical bay chair with the specific stillness of a soldier who has been trained not to fidget and watched Anakin with the direct, assessing attention he brings to everything. "This is not routine," Rex said. "No," Anakin said. Rex looked at him for a moment. "How bad?" "I don't know yet. That's what we're determining." Rex nodded once, in the way of a man who has decided to trust a judgment he cannot yet fully evaluate, and submitted to the scan. The chip sits at the base of the skull, tucked against the hypothalamic structure with a precision that speaks to decades of refinement, not a first-generation design, not an experiment, but a mature technology placed by hands that had done it thousands of times. Its external profile matches the growth acceleration function listed in the Kaminoan documentation precisely enough that a standard medical scan, not looking for it specifically, would find nothing worth flagging. Anakin had been looking for it specifically. He extracted it with the focused care of someone who has been taking machines apart since he was 4 years old, and understanding them completely since he was 8. The chip is small, 3 millimeters, semi-organic casing. A transmission receiver embedded in its lateral face that has no growth acceleration function and no documented purpose in any Kaminoan specification sheet he has ever been shown. He holds it under the magnification lens for a long time. Rex is very quiet behind him. "What does it do?" Rex says. Not a question, exactly. The syntax of a man who already suspects the answer and is offering someone else the chance to say it first. Anakin sets the chip in the specimen container and seals it. "It waits," he says. The full picture assembles itself in the facility's data center over the course of 6 hours. Anakin and Windu working through the Kaminoan records with the systematic attention of 2 people who have been trained to find the fracture in a structure by applying pressure at every joint until one of them moves. The chip has 2 operational states. The first is the documented function, growth regulation, the cover architecture, entirely functional and entirely real. The second is dormant, sealed behind an authorization protocol that requires an external signal of a specific frequency to activate. They cannot determine the activation signal from the Kaminoan records. The records have a gap, not a deletion, something more careful than a deletion. A restructuring of the file architecture that leaves no obvious wound but produces a space where information should be. What they can determine is the scope. Every clone trooper produced by the Kaminoan facility. Every member of the Grand Army of the Republic. Windu stands back from the terminal. He is very still. Anakin watches him process it, the calculation running behind his eyes with the cold efficiency of a man mapping the implications of a shatterpoint across a structure of galactic scale. An army of 1,000,000 soldiers. One signal. One moment. "Dooku," Anakin says. Windu looks at him. He confirmed a Sith Master is orchestrating the war. He named no one. But this, Anakin gestures at the terminal. At the scope of it, this is not a separatist operation. The separatists don't control the clone army. The Republic does. Someone with Republic-level authorization designed this into the contract from the beginning. He pauses. Someone who needed the army to exist, and needed it to be controllable, and needed no one to know those 2 things were connected. The data center hums around them. Outside the transparent steel panels, the ocean moves in its endless, directionless way, indifferent to the conversation happening above it. "Palpatine," Windu says. The word comes out flat and final, the last piece of a proof that has been building for years arriving at its conclusion. Not a question, not a suspicion. A theorem resolved. Anakin nods. The file Windu has been building for 3 years, the flattery that the Shatterpoint sense saw through, the manufactured crises, the emergency powers accumulated with patient, almost geological slowness, the chip protocol bearing the hallmarks of centralized, deliberate design, completes itself in this moment. Every element resolves into a single, coherent architecture. They sit with it for a moment, the 2 of them, in the clinical white light of a Kaminoan data center at the edge of an endless ocean. Then, Windu removes his comlink and makes a call. Not to the Senate, not to Republic intelligence, to Yoda. The transmission is brief. Windu does not use the name over an open channel. He uses language that Yoda will parse, and no surveillance system will flag. "We have found the mechanism," Windu says. "It is older than the war. It reaches further than the war." A pause. "We are returning." "Convene the council." Full chamber. Yoda's voice comes back after a moment. "Expected this." "I did not," he says. The words carry a weight that goes beyond their content, the particular weight of a being who has lived for centuries and has still been outmaneuvered. "Certain, are you?" Windu looks at the specimen container on the table between them, the chip inside it, 3 millimeters of semi-organic casing, patient and dormant and waiting for a signal that will not now arrive. "Yes," he says. The channel closes. Anakin picks up the specimen container and places it carefully in his jacket's inner pocket, against his chest, where he can feel its weight for the entire flight back to Coruscant. He does not sleep on the transport. Neither does Windu. The full council convenes at dawn, all 12 seats occupied. The morning light comes through the curved panels in its usual pale bands, the same light that has fallen across this chamber for 10,000 years of Jedi history. And it falls now across 12 faces that are very still in the way of people receiving information that reorganizes everything around it. Windu presents the evidence without preamble. The behavioral anomaly reports. The Kaminoan contract gap. The chip, still in its specimen container, passed from hand to hand around the circle. The transmission record from the secured Dooku interrogation. 14 months of patient, methodical questioning. Dooku's resistance finally giving way not to pressure, but to the accumulated weight of a man in a cell with nothing left to protect, confirming the existence of a Sith Lord at the Republic's center without naming him, the field of candidates narrowing to one. He lays it in sequence, one confirmed fact at a time. No speculation that has not earned its place. The chamber is very quiet when he finishes. Ki-Adi-Mundi speaks first. "The scope of this is what it is," Windu says. "The scope does not change the facts." Plo Koon's eyes move to the specimen container, now returned to the table at the chamber's center. An army of 1,000,000 soldiers. One signal, which he does not yet know we have found, Anakin says. He is standing at the chamber's edge, the position a Padawan takes, which he is not any longer, but old habits of posture persist. "We pulled the chip from one trooper's skull in a medical bay on Kamino. The Kaminoans know we were there and know we accessed their records. Whether they report that access to Palpatine depends on how directly he controls their communication protocols, which we don't know." "How long do we have?" Adi Gallia asks. "Unknown," Windu says. "Days, possibly less if the Kaminoans have a direct reporting obligation." The council absorbs this. Yoda sits in his chair with his hands folded over his Geimer stick and his eyes closed. And the quality of his stillness is different from everyone else's, not the stillness of processing, but the stillness of a being who has been waiting for this moment to arrive for longer than most of the people in the room have been alive. "Authorize action. The council must," he says, his eyes open. But carefully, the debate takes 2 hours. Options are laid out and examined and rejected with the systematic efficiency of people who understand that the margin for error in this particular operation is functionally zero. A public accusation before the Senate, dismissed immediately. Palpatine has spent 20 years constructing institutional loyalty, and an accusation without witnessed confirmation produces a political crisis that he controls better than they do. A larger strike team, examined, argued, set aside. Windu's analysis of the tactical geometry is precise. Palpatine is a Sith Master with decades of dark side cultivation, who has been preparing for exposure since he first took office. Overwhelming force announced in advance gives him time and space to activate contingencies they cannot predict. It also risks drawing the confrontation into the corridors and chambers of the Senate district, where civilian exposure is total. The surgical option is the opposite of every instinct that says safety lies in numbers. It is also correct. 2 people, Windu says, for the 3rd time, with the patience of someone who has stated a correct position before, and will state it again until the room catches up. Moving fast. No announcement. The shatterpoint in his position is the man himself, not his army, not his institutional power, not his separatist proxies. Those are the structure he has built. He is the load-bearing joint. We address the joint. And if you fall, Shakti says, then the Council knows what it knows. The chips can be deactivated individually. It will take time. But the mechanism is understood now. His largest weapon is already neutralized regardless of the outcome in that office. Windu meets her eyes. We do not fall. Yoda looks between Windu and Anakin for a long moment. The look carries something in it that is not doubt and not certainty, but something older than both. Decided. This is, he says quietly. Go. End this. They move through the district on foot, in civilian clothes, without the lightsabers visible. The Senate district at midday is its own kind of chaos, administrative traffic, senatorial aides moving between buildings with the slightly harried urgency of people whose schedules are always one meeting behind. The low, continuous sound of the city's transit systems audible even here at the Republic's political center. No one looks at them twice. This is, Anakin reflects, somewhat remarkable given what they are about to do. He catalogues the thought and sets it aside. Windu walks slightly ahead. He has said nothing since they left the temple, and the silence has a texture to it. Not tension, not uncertainty, but the specific quality of a mind that has completed its analysis and is now simply executing. Every variable that could be addressed has been addressed. What remains is the execution, and the execution does not require commentary. Anakin matches his pace. He is 22 years old. He has been in combat hundreds of times. He has taken a city with 30% fewer men than the parameters called for, has walked into Geonosis at Windu's side with 2 lightsabers against 200 droids, has sat across from Palpatine in a chair 3 inches lower than the desk, and watched the darkness move behind his face, and said nothing, and felt nothing betray him. He is not afraid now. What he feels is cleaner than that. The circuit is open and the Force moves through him in the steady, controlled way of something that has been trained for years for this precise moment. He thinks briefly of Padme, not as a distraction, as an anchor. The knowledge that she exists, that she is in the Senate building 300 meters from here working on a supply chain bill because the war's machinery requires legislation even at the moment of its dismantling. The thought is a still point. He touches it once and lets it go. They turn the final corner. The Republic Executive Building rises ahead, its facade catching the afternoon light. Its security checkpoint manned by the usual complement of Republic guards in their red ceremonial armor. The guards see Windu's face and step aside before he speaks. The turbolift ascends in silence. Anakin watches the floor indicators increment upward and thinks about geometry. The office they are ascending toward is a known space. He has been in it, has sat in it, has read its furniture arrangement as a precision instrument of psychological control and filed the observation and never needed it until now. He knows the desk's position relative to the windows. He knows the secondary exits, a private corridor behind the main office, a refresher anteroom to the left, a formal reception area to the right. He knows that Palpatine, at this hour on this day, will be in the main office with no aides. It is his established practice to take the mid-afternoon hour alone, a habit his staff has noted in the scheduling records that Republic intelligence pulled for them this morning. He knows that Palpatine has almost certainly anticipated something like this. Not the precise mechanism, the chip discovery is too recent, and the Kaminoan's reporting timeline is uncertain, but a man who has been moving pieces across a galactic board for 20 years has contingencies for exposure that do not require advance notice. The lightsabers are under their cloaks. Windu's hand is not near his, and neither is Anakin's, and they will remain that way until the office doors close behind them. The turbolift stops. The anteroom is empty. The aide's desk unoccupied. Through the tall inner doors, no sound. Windu looks at the doors for one moment. He does not look at Anakin. They have said everything that needs to be said, and what has not been said exists in 15 years of training and trust, and a single approving nod in a temple sal that Anakin has never forgotten. Windu opens the doors. Palpatine is standing at the window, not at his desk, standing, facing the Coruscant skyline with his hands clasped behind his back. And there is something in the posture that Anakin reads in the first second and catalogs without expression. He was expecting someone. He turns as they enter, and his face arranges itself into its pleasant configuration, with a speed that is almost convincing. "Almost, Master Windu," he says. His eyes move to Anakin. "And young Skywalker." "What an unexpected." "It is not unexpected," Windu says. He steps through the doorway. Anakin follows. The doors seal behind them with a sound that is very final. Palpatine looks at them both for a long moment. The pleasant configuration holds for exactly 3 more seconds, like a load-bearing wall-absorbing force it was not built to handle. Then it goes. What is underneath it is very old. And it is not pleasant at all. The mask drops all at once. It does not slide. It does not fracture gradually. One moment Sheev Palpatine stands in the afternoon light of his office, with the pleasant configuration assembled across his face, and then Anakin watches the Shatterpoint sense deliver something it has never delivered before. Not hairline fractures, not the subtle misalignment of performance and structure, but a total inversion. The mask and the thing beneath it exchanging places completely, and what surfaces is so old and so dark that the air in the office changes quality. His face changes with it. The skin pulls differently against the bone. His eyes, which have always carried warmth as a deployed instrument, carry something else now. Something that has been behind the warmth for decades. Patient and vast and very cold. His voice drops an octave and loses everything that made it the Chancellor's voice. What remains is Darth Sidious. "I wondered," he says, "when you would find the courage." Windu's hand moves to his lightsaber. Courage has nothing to do with it. The purple blade ignites. Sidious moves first. This is the first thing Anakin registers, not the lightning. Not the blade that appears from somewhere in his robe with the speed of a reflex so trained it has become autonomic, but the initiative. He does not wait to be addressed. He does not posture. He simply crosses the distance between himself and Windu in 2 steps and unleashes the full dark side force of 60 years of Sith cultivation in a single compressed offensive sequence that hits Windu's defense like a structural impact. Windu holds. The blade exchanges happen faster than Anakin can consciously track in the first 3 seconds. Sidious fighting in a style that has Vaapad's fingerprints on it, the aggressive circuit building, the tempo shifts, the capacity to absorb and redirect, but underneath those fingerprints something older and less disciplined, and far more willing to spend itself entirely. He is not a superconductor. He is a reactor running past its design parameters, generating more output than its containment is rated for, and using that excess as a weapon. Anakin enters from the left. Sidious splits his attention without breaking stride, a half-rotation that brings his offhand up and discharges force lightning at Anakin while his blade continues pressing Windu, the 2 offensives running simultaneously with the casual contempt of someone who does not consider the secondary target a significant variable. Anakin catches the lightning on his blade. It costs him. The discharge travels up the weapon into his hands and forearms, with a current that is not entirely physical. There is something in Sith lightning that is not electricity, that carries the dark side's specific character the way a transmitted signal carries its source's frequency, and receiving it directly is like opening a door and having something try to come through. The Vaapad circuit catches it, metabolizes it, converts the incoming aggression into output. He presses forward. The office does not survive the first 2 minutes intact. The desk goes on Windu's 3rd repositioning maneuver, the ancient wood detonating under a redirected force push. The tall windows at the room's western face develop fractures that propagate from the lower left corner upward in branching patterns. The chairs, the display cases, the carefully arranged instruments of a political career spanning 20 years, the engagement reduces them to obstruction, and then to debris. Sidious fights without apparent concern for any of it. He is genuinely dangerous. This is the thing Anakin has known intellectually since Windu first said the word Sith in a temple briefing room, and has not understood in his body until now. The danger is not in the technique. Anakin has trained against Windu's Vaapad for 15 years, and Windu is the form's originator, and Sidious's style is a derivative of that. The danger is in the depth. 60 years of dark side cultivation has produced a force presence of a scale that Anakin has no reference point for. It presses against the circuit the way deep water presses against a hull, from every direction simultaneously, and the circuit was not designed for omnidirectional input. He takes a hit across the shoulder. Not a blade strike, a force impact, concentrated, that drives him back 3 meters into the wall and leaves his left arm partially numb to the elbow. He gets up immediately. Across the room, Windu is bleeding from a cut above his eye that he sustained somewhere in the last 30 seconds and has not acknowledged. He is fighting at a level Anakin has seen in training and never in the field. Full Vaapad state, the circuit running at its designed ceiling, his blade moving in the oscillating, almost unpredictable patterns that the form produces at maximum engagement. Sidious is pressing him back toward the window, methodically, the way you back a dangerous animal into a corner. Anakin looks at Windu's position. He looks at Sidious's footwork. He opens the Shatterpoint sense fully, past the combat noise, past the lightning and the blade work, and the dark side pressure bearing down from every angle. He finds it. It is not in Sidious's technique. It is not in his position or his guard or his weight distribution. It is in the output itself, in the scale of dark side power being generated and discharged continuously for the past 4 minutes at a rate that has no sustainable ceiling. 60 years of cultivation, a force presence of galactic scale, and he is spending it. Running the reactor past its rated parameters means the containment degrades in proportion to the output. And the output has been extraordinary. The fracture is in the source. He is giving more than he can recover. The Shatterpoint sits at the exact junction where Sidious's power and Sidious's control meet, and the junction is moving, the power staying constant. The control beginning, incrementally, to cost more than it's returning. He has perhaps 90 seconds before it closes. Anakin gets up from the wall. Windu, one word. The specific tone he uses for tactical communication in a live engagement, the tone that means I have the geometry, and Windu, across 15 years of combined training and 3 years of active combat, hears it and reads it completely. Windu disengages a half step, not retreating, creating space. An invitation that looks like a stumble. Sidious takes it. He presses forward, increasing output, the dark side energy discharging in waves now, lightning arcing between his free hand and the ceiling in continuous forking channels now, Windu says. Anakin opens the Vaapad circuit completely. No ceiling, no self-protective throttle, every channel fully open, receiving the lightning the way a conductor receives current. The loop taking the dark side energy and converting it to output at maximum rate. Windu does the same. The alignment happens not as a decision but as a recognition. 2 circuits that have been calibrated against each other for 15 years, finding their shared frequency with the inevitability of tuning forks in proximity. The loop connects. Anakin feels it as a physical reality. A completion of a circuit that runs out through his blade and into the space between them and through Windu's blade and back. The combined channel carrying not 2 practitioners' individual capacity, but something that compounds between them, amplified by the depth of the trust and the years of the training, and the very specific knowledge of each other that only comes from standing in the same room for 15 years and never looking away. Sidious's lightning enters the loop and returns. The discharge that comes back to him is his own power, metabolized and redirected through 2 Vaapad circuits running in alignment, and it arrives at the Shatterpoint Anakin identified. The junction where his power and his control meet, already degraded, already past its rated load, with the precision of a strike that knows exactly where the structure is already failing. Sidious's control breaks. The final movement is brief and without ceremony. The dark side power that has been sustaining his offense turns against its source, the containment failing under the weight of its own output. And what Sidious experiences in the 4 seconds that follow is the equivalent of a reactor consuming itself. Total, structural, irreversible. He goes to one knee. It is the first time in the entire engagement that his knees have touched the floor. Windu looks at Anakin. Anakin is already moving. He crosses the remaining distance. Sidious raises one hand. Not in offense. The offense is gone. But in the instinctive gesture of a man reaching for an authority that no longer exists. And Anakin takes the wrist and removes the last weapon from the equation, and stands over the most dangerous being in the galaxy at the moment that being ceases to be dangerous. He feels the full weight of what this is. He does not step back from the weight. He has been trained not to step back from things simply because they are heavy. He makes it clean. The office settles into silence. Outside the fractured windows, Coruscant continues its perpetual motion. A trillion lives, a million ships, the endless commerce and argument and ordinary existence of a republic that does not yet know it just survived the thing that was going to end it. Anakin stands in the wreckage of the most powerful political office in the galaxy and breathes. Windu comes to stand beside him. He is still bleeding from the cut above his eye. His cloak is gone somewhere in the debris. He looks at what the office has become and then at Anakin, and the look carries something that has no operational category. "You found it," Windu says. "The Shatterpoint." "You taught me how," Anakin says. The words are simple. They are also the most complete thing either of them has said in 15 years. Windu is quiet for a moment. "Yes," he says. "I did." The Senate learns before dawn. Not from an announcement, from the absence of one. Palpatine's office does not open at its scheduled hour. His morning briefing is missed. His aide, arriving at the usual time, finds the anteroom empty and the inner doors sealed and calls security. And security calls Republic Intelligence. And Republic Intelligence calls the Senate leadership. And by the time the sun clears Coruscant's eastern skyline, the information is moving through the building's corridors in the specific way that information moves when it has no official container yet. In fragments, in whispers, in the looks exchanged between people who know something large has shifted, but cannot yet name the shape of it. Windu names it in a formal address to the Senate at the 9th hour. He does not editorialize. He presents the evidence in the same sequence he presented it to the Council: the chips, the contract gap, the Dooku confirmation, the nature of the threat, and the nature of its resolution. His voice in the Senate chamber carries the same quality it always carries: the flat, absolute precision of a man who does not perform conviction because he does not need to. The chamber is silent in a way it has rarely been in its history. Then it is not silent at all. The separatist leadership, which has been a body without its head since Geonosis, collapses over the following 11 days with the structural logic of a building whose foundation has been removed. The corporate interests begin their retreat within 48 hours, contracts quietly voided, financial positions unwound, the particular cowardice of institutions that chose a side and are now choosing again. The droid army, receiving no strategic direction from a command structure that no longer exists in any coherent form, begins standing down in engagements across the Outer Rim as local separatist commanders accept terms rather than fight a war whose purpose they can no longer articulate. The clone troopers' chips are deactivated individually, legion by legion, a process that takes 3 weeks and the work of every available Jedi healer and Republic medical officer. Rex submits to the procedure first, voluntarily, and waits in the medical bay while it is completed with the same direct, assessing attention he brings to everything. When it is done, he sits quietly for a moment. "Did it feel different?" Anakin asks. "Before, no," Rex says. "That's the part that..." He stops. Finds the word. "That's the part." Anakin nods. He doesn't push further. Some things a man keeps. The Clone Wars end not with a treaty ceremony, but with a gradual, almost anticlimactic cessation, the machinery of war running down by degrees, the last engagements concluding, the last disputed systems returning to Republic jurisdiction. The galaxy does not roar with relief. It exhales, slowly, over the course of weeks. Like a structure that has been under load for so long that even the removal of the weight requires time to register. All 12 seats. Morning light. The chamber Anakin has been entering since he was 9 years old, always from the floor, always at the edge, always in the position that marks the boundary between full membership and its threshold. He stands at the chamber's center now, which is different. Windu requested the session. The agenda, circulated in advance to the council, contains 2 items. The first is Anakin's formal report on the Camino investigation and the events in the Chancellor's office, a procedural requirement, documentation for the historical record, completed in writing already and requiring only formal presentation. The second item is listed without elaboration, which is Windu's way of indicating that its elaboration will be provided in the room. The first item takes 20 minutes. The second item begins with Anakin saying, clearly and without preamble, that he has been in a relationship with Senator Padme Amidala for 14 months. That the relationship is conducted with full mutual awareness of the code's attachment restriction, and that he is disclosing it now formally, because it deserves formal disclosure. The chamber is quiet. Ki-Adi-Mundi looks at Windu. You were aware of this. I suspected it for approximately 11 months, Windu says. I did not confirm or address it directly. Why not? Because I was watching what it produced in him rather than what it represented in principle. Windu folds his hands on the arms of his chair. He speaks with the deliberate care of a man who has been constructing this argument for some time and is now delivering it to the audience it was built for. The attachment restriction exists because the Order's history demonstrates, repeatedly, that unaddressed attachment becomes fear of loss, and fear of loss becomes a fracture that the dark side finds and enters through. This is correct. This is a real pattern with real consequences. He pauses. It is also an incomplete solution. The Order addressed the symptom, attachment, rather than the structural condition that makes attachment dangerous, fear. Specifically, the inability to process fear, to metabolize it, to hold what we love without making its loss the center of our power. He looks around the circle. What I have spent 15 years teaching Anakin Skywalker is the alternative to suppression, not the absence of attachment, the discipline to carry it without being carried by it. The chamber is very still. He is proof of concept, Windu continues. A Jedi who loves someone, who carries that attachment openly and without secrecy, who has walked into the most dangerous room in the galaxy and done what needed doing without the darkness finding a single fracture to enter through. He meets Yoda's eyes. The restriction itself is a shatterpoint in the Order's own structure. We built a rule that produces exactly the anxiety we are trying to prevent, the secrecy, the shame, the fear of exposure that compounds the fear of loss. We designed our own vulnerability. Yoda has not moved during this. His eyes rest on Anakin, not Windu, with an attention that goes through Anakin rather than simply landing on him. Wrong, we were, Yoda says finally. The words are simple and very heavy. For a long time, he closes his eyes, opens them. Change. The code must. The vote is not unanimous. It is sufficient. The second matter on the agenda concludes. A third item, not listed, is introduced by Yoda. He does not make speeches. He does not have the style for them, and does not require them. He looks at Anakin from his chair, the ancient weight of him present in the room the way the building itself is present, structural, foundational, predating everything else in it. 15 years, Yoda says. Watched you, I have. From a boy who carried a darkness too large for his years. A pause. Now, a man who carries it correctly. He nods once. Ready, you are. The council agrees. Anakin looks at Windu. Windu is already standing. The ceremony is not elaborate. The Jedi do not perform elevation with the Senate's taste for spectacle. There is no crowd, no address, no processional. There is a chamber and 12 masters, and a formal acknowledgement spoken aloud in the ancient tradition that predates the Republic by 3,000 years. Windu speaks the acknowledgement. His voice carries the same precision it always does. He does not alter his cadence for the occasion. He does not need to. When he finishes, he looks at Anakin for a moment that extends a beat past its formal necessity. Something crosses his face. It is brief. It is not suppressed, which is unusual. Windu suppresses almost everything that is not operationally necessary to display. This he does not suppress. It is the expression of a man who made a decision 15 years ago in a chamber very much like this one, overriding a grieving young knight and taking on a frightened boy who was too much of everything, and is looking now at what that decision produced. It is not quite a smile. It is warmer than anything Anakin has seen on that face in 15 years of proximity. Well done, Skywalker, Windu says. The use of the surname, after this many years, is its own form of intimacy. the name he has used from the beginning, now carrying 15 years of what the beginning became. Anakin holds his gaze. His face is still, in the way of someone who has been trained by this man to keep stillness as a default. And underneath the stillness, something that does not have a clean operational name. "Thank you, Master," he says. The sun sets over Coruscant in the way it always does, not dramatically, because there is too much artificial light competing with it, but gradually, the sky shifting through amber and rose into the deep blue of a city that does not fully darken. They stand at the terrace railing, the two of them, looking out over it. Master and former apprentice. Two masters now, by the Council's formal word, standing at the edge of a building that has stood for 10,000 years and will stand, now for whatever comes after. Windu does not fill the silence. He never has. Anakin looks out at the city, the ships, the lights, the endless living motion of a republic that survived what should have ended it, and breathes. The darkness is still in him. It will always be in him. It is part of the instrument, part of the circuit, part of what makes the loop run at the scale it runs at. He has known this since he was 11 years old on a highland plateau on Harun Kal, screaming into the heat, and a man handed him a practice blade and told him to aim it. The darkness does not frighten him. He has been taught, by the most rigorous and demanding teacher the Order has produced in a generation, exactly what to do with it. He breathes in, he breathes out. The city moves below them, alive and ordinary and entirely unaware of the two men standing quietly above it, and that is exactly as it should be. The Chosen One has fulfilled his prophecy, not by escaping what he was, but by mastering it. The darkness learned which direction to flow. Let us know what you'd like to see next. The end.